So in my game, we have this load and save function with this save menu where I can load different saves. So I can load this save right here, and it's got all the stats from that save file, but we've got 99 different save files, so I can load the save file from this one, and now we're in a different location with like different gameplay time and all that stuff. You guys have probably seen this happening on live streams. I've been asked how this actually works, and while I won't be getting into the whole like placing the character in the correct level where you saved, because it's just like a little too complicated to combine it within this tutorial as well, I have an entire video about the way you should be loading levels in Unreal Engine, and that kind of covers that. Today, I want to talk about the actual loading system itself. Like, how do we set up a menu with all of these save files in here? So I made a blank new Unreal Engine project where we're going to pretty much just be re-implementing a basic setup like that. The final project files will be down below in the description for patrons and YouTube members, as always, to download. Let's get into it, because there's quite a few things that we want to start doing. There's a couple of layers to this, that being the actual save and load screen itself, which holds separate widgets for every single save file. We've got the save system itself, and now we've got a meta save file as well. So let's get started by setting up the blueprint widgets, because I think that is a good place to start. It gets us like the skeleton of the system, and we can work from there. So we're going to start by making our widget blueprint for a save slot. And this save slot, I personally like to make the root object here a size box, which we can just drag and drop in. And here we can override the width and the height, or the minimum width and height and stuff like that. I really like working with those. So I'm just going to copy the values that I have in my actual game, which is about 1050 for the width. And then we have about 340 height. If this doesn't update on screen, you want to come up here where it says fill screen, and you can say screen desired or desired on screen, and it will show you the actual size. So now if I change this, it will show you the appropriate size. Then next up, we're going to add in a button, because these are going to be save slots that you can click on. So we just want a button to be able to easily interact with them and select them and just use Unreal's built-in like UI interaction system. I'll just call that save button for now. And from there, there's a little bit of styling that's entirely up to yourself. We're going to add in an overlay inside of that button, because a button can only have like one child object, because it's supposed to only like take in text, but you can style in some more. So if you put in an overlay, now in the overlay we can put in a lot of child objects. And once that overlay is in place, we want to fill horizontally and vertically so that it fills the entire space for the save button. And then we can start putting in some text. So let's put in a text here, which is automatically going to get outlined to the top right. You can just use the alignment here. So let's say we want to align this, or the top left rather, we want to align this to the bottom right, for instance. I actually want this on the bottom left. And then we can add a little bit of padding. So we want padding from the bottom to be like 20 units, and then padding from the left to also be 20 units. So that offsets a little bit into the save file itself. The justification for this is going to be left to right. So if we start writing some more stuff to it, it's going to be adding to the left. This is all general, usual graphic design stuff. So this will be our save location. This is going to display a text of the location that we see, which of course we'll have to provide to it eventually, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Another thing that we are going to cover today is adding a game time value, which is quite a neat thing. So let's add another text block here, and we'll actually anchor this one to the top right. And again, we're going to give this some padding from the top, let's say 25 for this, and some padding from the right as well. Quick little tip, actually, you can see up here with the padding, it has all of the values right next to each other, so that's 0, 25, 25, 0. If we just add in 25 and nothing else, it's going to set all of these to 25, which is, if your padding needs to be the same in all directions, a quicker way to do it. Anyway, this is going to have the game time displayed in it, and this one will set the text to align to the right. So now if we say we've been playing for 16 minutes, the game time will move to the left and it will be outlined based on the rightmost character. That way it doesn't like go off the save file. And you can add anything you want to this. In my game, I also have, I have the save slot open right here for reference material. I have a bunch of stuff, right? I've got the save slots, which we can actually add that one as well for a little bit of text. I've got the save location. I've got an image, which I still need to implement, of the level where you saved. So I'm going to need to take images of those levels. I've got a couple of icons for like whether or not things are unlocked in your save file yet or not. Again, that's not entirely implemented, but that's the idea. Let's actually add in the save slot as well. So how I did that there, when you want to add multiple things on top of each other, it is really nice to use this horizontal, or actually I think I used a vertical box, which is just a thing, kind of orders every child object in it. So we've got our save location here. If we put that in the vertical box, we then need to outline the vertical box itself, of course, to being in the location that save location was. We're going to be outlining the text itself back to the middle, I think, and get rid of this padding. We'll just give the vertical box a little bit of padding now as well. So we'll set that to 20. And now if we add a second text to this vertical box, it'll just add a second text and a third text and so on and so forth. It's a really nice way to easily display stacked on top of each other text. So let's call this bottom one the save slots text, which we'll just put in save slot X for a placeholder. And we'll outline this actually to the left. I think that'll look best. Same thing for this, outline it to the left. And you can still add in a little bit of padding here. So if I want to say, I actually want the save location to be a little bit higher, let's add some padding here, and there you go. We're getting a little bit stuck on the design portion of this. So let's actually take a look at the code. Because now that we have this set up, we just need to make sure that the text that we want to be able to programmatically set are all set to being variables. So that's, in this case, literally everything. And we just want to do one more thing, and that's going into the event graph here. We want to get our save button, and we want to do something with it on-clicked or on-pressed, whatever you prefer. Let's go with on-clicked. We want to add a event dispatcher here. So this is, let's call this on save button clicked. Let's compile that, and we can give this a signature here. So if we add a new parameter input, we want to give in the save name that this particular button is going to load. And that's of course going to be a string value. So now we can say, hey, whenever we press that button, just call this event dispatcher. And all things are going to be listening out for that so that it can know, okay, so this button was just pressed. That's calling it with a specific save name, and we're going to load the name. And we're going to load the save with that name. As such, we're of course going to promote the save name to a variable, which you can set to instance editable if you want to, but we're going to be setting this programmatically anyway, so you don't really need to expose it like that. And that's all the code that the save button itself needs. That's actually quite simple. Then the next thing that we make is another user interface here, and that's going to be a user widget again. And this will be our save slot stack. And this is just going to be a stack of save slots, as the name implies. So we're going to start again with a size box, because I prefer working with these most. And we're going to set this to desired on screen. And we can set the width and the height here. So let's set this to like, I don't know, 800 by 1200 or something like that. You can play around with your values. Inside of that, we're going to put a scroll box. And this is just going to allow us to add widget elements to it, and it's going to provide us with automated setup scrolling. So if we put in like 100 save slots, which we're going to do, you just can scroll through it. It's very easy to work. So let's do that. Let's go into the event graph here, and we're going to need to set up a couple of things. Eventually, this will also need to read our meta save file, which is going to have information about the save files in this list, but we'll get to that in a moment. For now, all that we're going to do is we're just going to do a for loop, and this is going to loop through the amount of save slots that you want to make. So I set this to 98. That's going to make 99 save slots. That's probably fine. That's probably enough, right? And in that loop body, we're simply going to create a widget of class save slots, the thing that we just made. Here we can get all of the text variables that we just made in that. So get game time, for instance, and I think we had get save slot text and get save slot location or something like that. These are the only things that we made, I do believe. Yeah, there's only 3 of them. So here we can get those. And from those, we can set the text inside of them to whatever text code is eventually going to set these to. So we can just hook those up for now. And they're just going to be empty, but we'll get back to this in a moment. The one that we can, however, already set is our save slot text, I just realized. So we'll get an append string node, and that's going to go into there. This will automatically convert it to a text value, so that's great. And this will just pass in save slots and then put in a colon, and the thing that's going to pass in is our for loop index plus 1, so that it starts counting at 1 up to 99 rather than 0 through 98. It's just a little bit more user friendly. And now everything will automatically get set to the proper save slots to be displayed. But we're not actually displaying anything yet, so that's not great. Let's add them to the viewport. And instead of what you might be used to doing add viewport here, what we're going to be doing instead is we want to make sure that our scroll box here is set to a variable so that we can use it in the event graph, as shown up now. And here we simply add this thing as a child. So the content that we're going to be adding will be the widget that we just created. And when we add that as a child, it's going to be added to that scroll box, and Unreal is going to take care of everything for us. Now, I also personally made a extra custom event here that just will reload the save stack, because sometimes you will need to reload this. So having a thing that you can call very easily to just say, hey, regenerate the entire save stack for me will be easy. So now we have our scroll box, and we can actually see in the designer, we just have it because we are doing this on event pre-constructs. It does also do it in the designer, not just on runtime. And you can see this is save slot 1, 2, 3, and this will go down and down and down. I don't know if we can actually scroll in here. I don't think we can, but you get the point. And very similar to what we did in the button there, adding an event dispatcher that would happen when we pressed a button. We also want to add an event dispatcher here that will, whenever this for loop is done and constructing the entire save stack, we want to call out with an event dispatcher. So we can say on save stack reloaded, and simply at the end of the for loop, once it is completed, we're going to call out with that, because whatever widget this is going to be in will need to know that to then map other functionality to it. We'll get to that in a moment. And now we get to actually making the proper save screen. So let's make yet another user interface. Personally, I'm using Common UI in my project, but I don't want to bother you guys too much with all that. So we're just going to do it as a normal user widget. And I will make this the save menu. For this one, I am actually going to use a canvas panel. You can just do this with an overlay panel as well. But since this is like the highest level of this entire system, doing it with a canvas panel is fine. But if you're then going to like instance this in other things for whatever reason, of course you don't want this to be a canvas panel. In my own game, I have a couple of things like delete all save files, a back button, I have a timer that displays here as well. All that we're going to do for this to show you how to set things up is I'm just going to add in my save slot stack here, and we're just going to put that in here. And you can see that we can give this whatever size we want now very easily. And we want to make sure that we anchor this properly. So just anchor it to whatever size it is on the screen. And you will also know, by the way, maybe you're a little bit panicked here because we are missing the game time in the save location, but that is because they are being set to empty text. So if I just set this to 11 and this one to 12 and we compile this, that's entirely fine. It will now just add them like that. Now, what is important to note is that whenever we do this in just the pre-construct, this is fine because it's starting with a empty scroll box. If we're going to be calling the reload save stack, it's just going to add new ones to our scroll box. So we actually want to get our scroll box, and whenever we reload the save stack, we're reloading it. So we're wiping everything and regenerating everything. So we want to clear all children from our scroll box in our save slot stack as well. Just a quick little side tangent there, so that you understand how everything like works together. In the event graph, we're going to go into the event construct, and first and foremost, something that I just like to do is getting our save slot stack here, and I just want to set the focus to it. because that's the thing that we're going to be worrying about. So the game automatically setting its focus to that is kind of nice. Then I want to, from our save slot stack, assign an event to onSave stack reloaded. That is the event dispatcher that we just made, and we're going to be assigning an event to that, because when that happens, we want to do some stuff. Mainly that being, we want to just kind of run event construct again. And what we're going to be doing there is we're going to be running a for each loop. We're going to be running a for each loop on the array of children that this thing has, so we can get the scroll box out of our save slot stack. And that thing can get all children, which will get you an array of widgets. And we're going to loop over that entire array. And we're going to do that on event construct, but we're also going to be doing that if we ever want to regenerate. So whenever that event dispatcher fires, we also want to hook that up into this for each loop. We are going to have to cast this to our save slots that we made before, because we need to actually get the information out of it, and this will just get us a normal generic widget reference, so we need to cast that to upgrade it. And the reason that we need to do that is because, again, we're going to assign on button clicked. Remember that event dispatcher that we made inside of the button itself? Now we're actually going to be using that, because when we press any button, we want that button to do something and give its save name so that we can load the save corresponding to that specific button, for which we will need a save game function. You can put this in your game mode, you can put this in your game instance. I like putting it in the game instance because it just makes the most sense to me. So let's real quick make a game instance. It's actually remarkably easy to do. So we can just go into all classes, we make a game instance, and we call that like BP game instance. Important, if you do this in game instance and not in your game mode or whatever, you do need to go into your project settings and look for game instance, and you need to set your game instance class to the one that we just made, so that it's actually using that class. And there we can make a custom event for save game. And I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you are decently familiar with at least the basics of the Unreal save system. If not, I have an entire video showing off the basics about how everything works and explaining it a little bit more in detail. So we're going to kind of go through setting up a save system relatively quickly. So this takes in one input here, which will be our save game name in the form of a string. And the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to check if does save game exist with that name. Because if it doesn't, we need to make it. And if it does, we need to override it. So let's first go into the false direction, the one where we need to create the save game from scratch. So we can just create save game object. And now we need a save game class. So again, we're going to go and make a blueprint class for save game. And we'll call this BP save game or something like that. And here you're going to put in all the information that we want to save. So for instance, we want to save the game time, because that's one of the things that I was going to show off here. And that will be stored as a, let's go with an integer, makes the most sense. And let's also store a score count or something like that, just to show you that we're storing a couple of different things. And just to show you an example, in my own game, I store the HP, MP, strength and defense level. I have an array of event flags having happened, the player's experience, the level where I saved, and the playtime. So I'm saving a couple of things like that. Now that we have a save game class, we can just use that to create our new save game object. We're going to just, for ease of access, promote that to a variable real quick. This will be our save var. And that is how we create a new save object. But what if a save with that name already exists? Then we need to load that save so that we can override stuff in it. So we need to load game from slots. And of course, the slots will be our game slot name or whatever we call that. And this is going to return a generic save object. So we need to cast that to our BP save game that we just made. And we will set our save variable to that as well. So now we have something that sets our save variable in both scenarios. From here, we just get our save game variable and we just set the values in it. So we can set the game time and we can set the score in it. We'll get back to actually setting these values in a moment. We can get them from wherever we want, really. And we're going to do that in both of our different branches here. So they're going to come back together, the setting of all your information. And this can be like a lot bigger, a lot more complex, setting a bunch of different values. And once all that is done, we want to save game to slots. If you're doing a lot of stuff, you can also save game to slot async. And the save game object that we're going to be writing will be our save variable that we just set our stuff to. And we're going to be writing that to the save slot name that we get from our custom event here. So now we have got a save function or event set up in our game instance. Of course, you also then need a load game function, but again, I'm going to speed through this very, very quickly. We want a save name. We want to check whether or not that save exists, because we can't load something that doesn't exist, obviously. If that does exist, we want to, again, load save game from object and then cast it. We want to load it from the slot that we're trying to load it from. And then we can get the game time out of that, and we can get the score out of that, and we can set them to the proper places where they need to be. This can be done in a much more elegant way, where you make it a function that then returns that save game object so that you can read from it in whatever location you're calling this from. That's probably a little better. We're not going to bother doing that for now. We just have a score and a game time, and those are just going to exist on here. So let's just make those values like game time, which is going to be an integer, and our score, which we're also just going to set on here. And we will just set both of those values to the thing that we got from the save. And now going back to the save game real quick, now that we have those values, where we're setting them in the save file, we will use the values that we just have in the game instance here. Again, if you're doing some other stuff with like more data and you have data from a lot of different places, like don't store all that just in your game instance, obviously. But for now, for the example, this is not a video about setting up save systems in general. It's just for like the save slots, right? So this is a quick and dirty way. You probably need to do a better job for your actual projects. Anyway, we did all that going back into our save menu here. So that's the thing that has the canvas panel with the save slot stack. Because when we press any save button, we want to run this event. And what this event will do is we will get the game instance. We will cast that to our blueprint game instance. And from there, we will use the save game function that we just made. And hey, our save button will pass through the save name that is on it, which is really, really cool. And we can just kind of put that into the save game function. So now it will load the proper save. Now, of course, for our load menu, what we can do is we can just copy this over and call this load menu, because it does need to do something slightly differently programmatically. You can just make this into one widget and just like have a toggle on it, whether or not it's a save or a load in the form of a bool or an enum or whatever. For ease of use, we're going to just make it a separate widget for now, because it's going to require mostly the same code. But instead of saving the game here, of course, what it's going to do is we're going to load the game with that save name. Now, one thing that I've kind of neglected to do up until this point is we have this save slot which has a save name variable, but it's not actually getting set anywhere. So the way we would do that is going back into our save slot stack, the thing that makes this stack and gives all of the information to all of these save slots. When we make, in that for loop, in all of this, we also actually want to set the save name. And you can do that really anywhere you want. I like to do that right about here-ish. And we're going to use another one of these append string nodes for that. So let me just make a little bit of room so that we can actually properly do that. And we're going to just name this whatever you want. I'm going to probably just name this save, and then directly use the index from our for loop. So it's going to make save 0, save 1, save 2, save 3, save 4, and so on and so forth. So now all of them will also actually have that value populated. So saving and loading should now work in all of them. Now, I'm realizing that this video is starting to be quite long. What we're going to do is I'm going to wrap up implementing this save stack, because this is by far the most like complex and setup heavy part of this system. I'm going to show you how it works and that it works, and then next time we're going to do everything involving the meta save file. So that is the save file that will hold all the information about each and every save slot. So just very quickly, let's go into our third person character blueprint here. We'll add a debug key. I always go for F, I don't know why, which will just go into a flip-flop. On A, we will create a widget, our save menu. Let's promote it to a variable for save menu, and then add that to the viewport. And then on B, we're going to remove from parent. With debug key G, we'll do the exact same thing. But instead of adding a save menu, we're going to be adding in the load menu. Promote that to a variable. This will be load menu. We'll be adding that to the viewport. And when we go back through this, it'll be removed. Then I'll add one more debug key for like P, I don't know, something like that. And this one will just be increasing our score so that we can keep track of it fairly easily. And we'll print out the score as well. So there's a simply get game instance. We'll cast that to our blueprint game instance. We will get our score value, and we will simply increment it, and then we'll print string just to show you that it works. Obviously, we could do this in an entirely separate widgets in of itself. We're not going to bother with any of that for now. See that we're now 1, 2, 3, right? If I now add the this is the loading screen, and I try to load save slot 1, and we go back out of it, it's now continuing from where we left off. So I can add this all the way up to like 30. Again, save menu, save to slot 3. If you restart the game and I try to increase my score, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can load slot 1 and we can see it's 9, 10, 11. If we try to load slot 3, it'll start counting up from where we left off at 30. So we now have different save slots with different information in them with different save data. That's the bulk of the system, but we also sometimes want to display some information on our save slots, right? Like that game time, for instance, that we had in the example. And I'm going to make a separate video about that because that requires me to set up a meta save file. And this video is long enough as is. So hopefully you've enjoyed. I will say the project file down below in the description of this video will have the finished project with the meta save file already included as well. If you're watching this shortly after it's uploaded, it's going to be about a week before part 2 is online. If you're watching this sometime in the future, part 2 will already be online and you can just go and watch that if you don't want to get the Patreon download. And for the full course, if you're watching this in the future, it should be all up on the YouTube channel already. But if you're watching this shortly after it was uploaded, there will be a link down below in the description to the Patreon where you can find the full course. And a very big thank you to all of my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help out supporting the channel, there's a link down below in the description to the Patreon page. And a special thanks to my Cave Digger tier Patreons, Sir J. Thomas,